Talk 2 Fluency from beginner to fluent.
Take your English skills to the next level.
Welcome, curious minds, to the deep dive.
Hello.
Today, we're embarking on a mission, really crucial, actually, for anyone navigating the IELTS speaking test. We're not just going to skim the surface, common topics and all that.
Right.
Instead, our deep dive is into understanding why examiners ask certain questions.
And, more importantly, how you can ace them, how you can give them what they're looking for.
Exactly.
That's right. The core insight here, the one we really want you to grasp, is that every single question type, well, it's a deliberate invitation.
An invitation? How so?
It's an invitation for you to show off specific things, specific grammatical structures, elements of cohesion, how smoothly you link your ideas.
Okay.
And, of course, a rich range of vocabulary. The ultimate goal is to recognize these invites and deliver exactly what examiners expect for a high band score.
Okay, let's truly unpack this then. We'll be navigating the nuances, I guess, of all three parts of the IELTS speaking test.
Breaking down those common pitfalls.
Yeah, and revealing those winning strategies for your success.
Let's do it.
Right. Let's kick things off with part 1, mastering the personal touch.
The warm-up.
Kind of, yeah. This part is typically about, 5 minutes long? And you'll answer at least 11 questions.
Which means roughly 20 to 25 seconds per answer. Not long at all.
No, exactly. And the questions are personal, focusing on your experience, basic opinions, feelings, preferences.
Right. This is your prime opportunity straight off the bat to showcase your range of grammatical structures and appropriate vocabulary.
So first impressions count here.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's crucial that your answers in part 1 are snappy.
Snappy, meaning?
Meaning quick, no hesitation, no long pauses to think, just straight to the point, but, developed enough.
Okay.
The first 2 minutes often cover really predictable topics like where you live or what you do study or work.
Right, the basics.
Yeah, which makes it an incredibly important opportunity to make a strong first impression. The examiner's already kind of forming a mental note of your potential band score right there.
Wow, okay. So let's look at some examples then. How to answer, and maybe more importantly, how not to answer common part 1 questions.
Good idea.
Imagine the examiner asks you, what do you like about the area where you live? What's a good response look like?
Well, consider a high-scoring answer. Something aiming for, say, band 8. It could go something like this. For a start, it's not far from where I work.
Okay, practical.
In fact, I often walk to and from work. This only takes me like 10 to 15 minutes. Apart from that, there is a lovely park nearby.
Adding more detail.
Or my family and I go jogging most weekends. And if it's shops you want, a new shopping center opened up last year. It is pretty much everything we need.
Okay, so what makes that answer shine?
Well, it perfectly accepts that invitation we talked about. It doesn't just list facts.
Right.
It elaborates, connects ideas logically, weaves in specific supporting details. Notice how it moves beyond just simple statements.
Yeah, it describes, gives examples, explains. Close to work so I can walk, the park where we like jogging. It has everything we need. It flows.
Exactly. That's showing fluency and control.
Got it. So a common follow-up might be, do people of all ages live in the area? What's the pitfall here?
Oh, the classic mistake is just repeating the question back. Someone might say, well, yes, there are people of different ages living in the area.
Sounds a bit robotic.
It does, and it doesn't show much range.
Yeah.
The importance of paraphrasing, well, you can't overstate it.
Right.
A strong answer avoids that repetition and expands. For example, well, yes, there is quite a broad mix of generations, actually, as it's very residential. Lots of houses.
Okay.
You see many older retired people, as well as families with young kids. See?
Yeah.
Paraphrases and then gives example.
That makes sense. Good point about paraphrasing. It shows lexical resource, right? Or your vocabulary range. Okay, here's another one. Is it a good place for young people to live? What's the common mistake?
Giving a really short answer, like, personally speaking, no, there is nothing to do.
Which forces the examiner to prod you.
Exactly. They have to ask, why not? You don't want to make them pull the information out of you.
So the strategy.
Give the explanation straight away, for instance. Personally speaking, no, there's not much to do. I mean, for teenagers, it's pretty boring.
Right.
There's no cinema, not even a decent place to have a coffee, so really all we can do is go to a friend's house. Much fuller. Proactive, accepts the invitation to elaborate.
I see. And what about, say, are there many small businesses where you live? How do people mess this up?
Often with vague, overly colloquial answers like, Well, yeah, I guess, like small shops and things like that.
But wishy-washy.
Very.
Yeah.
This is where you show your vocabulary range. Precision, concrete examples, that's what's needed.
So a better answer would be?
Something like, well, yeah, indeed, there are quite a few, actually. Starting off with the small grocery stores and lots of specialist shops that have been there for years.
Okay, getting specific.
There is a florist, a watch repairer, and a great butcher's. See? Specific types shows a much wider lexical range.
Gotcha. Okay, here's one that seems designed for more complex grammar. Do you prefer buying things from big companies or small businesses?
Ah, yes, this is a great opportunity.
Yeah.
A high-scoring answer might use conditionals.
Like if.
Exactly. I think it depends, really. I mean, if it's something quite expensive, a smartphone or maybe a laptop, for example, I'd rather go to a large chain store where I can get a guarantee and, good customer service if anything goes wrong.
That makes sense. And it uses I'd rather go instead of just repeating prefer buying.
Excellent point. That's great paraphrasing. Plus, you've got comparatives, maybe topic-specific vocabulary like chain store, customer service.
Yeah.
That's pushing towards Band 9 territory, showing real control over complex structures.
Okay, one last part 1 example. Have you ever worked in a small business? What are the common errors here?
Grammar often trips people up. Incorrect tense is a big one. For a specific past event, you need the past simple.
Not I've worked.
No, that's present perfect.
Right.
If you're talking about one specific summer, it should be I worked. Also, wrong vocabulary, like saying half-time instead of part-time.
Ah, yeah.
And incorrect preposition saying like a waitress instead of as a waitress.
Little things, but they add up.
They do.
Yeah.
And if these kinds of errors are frequent and make it hard to understand you, well, that could limit your score to maybe a band 5, even if your fluency is okay otherwise.
Right. I've definitely heard that before. It's those small slips. So how would an improved answer sound? One that avoids those pitfalls.
An improved answer, maybe band 7 or higher, might be.
Indeed, I have, yes. One summer, when I was 18, I worked part-time in a restaurant.
Past simple, part-time.
Good. As a waitress. It was pretty hard work, actually, because I was on my feet all the time, but I really enjoyed it.
Expanding a bit.
It was a family business, you see, and they were all very nice to me. Correct tense, correct vocab, correct prepositions, and it expands naturally on the experience. Fluent and accurate. Perfect. So, to wrap up part 1, the key takeaway is snappy, accurate, but also expanded answers.
Show off that grammar range, that vocabulary.
Don't be too brief. Avoid those basic errors. And remember, it's your first chance to impress. Accept that invitation.
Exactly. Nail part 1 and you're off to a great start.
Okay, so we've nailed the art of the snappy part 1 answer. But the IELTS speaking test, as we know, throws different curveballs. Let's shift gears entirely and brave the challenge of part 2.
Ah, the long turn. Yes. This is often the part that makes people the most nervous.
I can see why.
Absolutely. Part 2 is unique because it's like a mini monologue. You get a topic card, sometimes called a cue card.
Right.
And you have just 1 minute to prepare. Then you have to speak for 1 to 2 minutes on that topic, usually without interruption.
Okay, and the examiner might give you a topic like, describe a beautiful place you have visited, something like that.
Precisely. Or maybe describe a skill you learned, or describe a person you admire. Lots of possibilities, but always focused on a personal experience or description.
That 1 minute of preparation time sounds absolutely critical. How should you use that precious 60 seconds effectively?
It's vital. Whatever you do, try to write out full sentences. You just won't have time.
Right.
Instead, use that minute for brainstorming keywords. Think of it like creating a quick mental map, or maybe jotting down bullet points.
Okay, a quick outline.
Exactly.
Okay.
Focus on the main points on the cue card, but also think about expanding them. So for a beautiful place, you might jot down where, when, who with, what did you do, and crucially, why was it beautiful? How did it make you feel?
So it's about quickly mapping out a logical flow, a story almost.
Yes, a mini story.
How do you make sure you actually speak for the full 2 minutes, though? That sounds like a long time when you're nervous. I worry people might finish in 30 seconds.
That's a really common concern.
Yeah.
The trick is to use that keyword outline as your guide, but don't just list things mechanically. Elaborate. If you jotted down beach, don't just say, I went to a beach. Expand on it. I visited this stunning, really secluded beach on a tiny island miles from anywhere.
Painting a picture.
The sand was incredibly fine, almost like, powdered sugar, and the water was this amazing crystal clear, vibrant turquoise color. it just took your breath away. These descriptive language, adjectives, adverbs.
Okay.
Connect your ideas with linking phrases. Also, another thing was, what really struck me was, include those details that bring it to life.
And what if you genuinely run out of things to say before the examiner stops you? Is it okay to just stop?
Well, if you genuinely feel you've covered everything on the card and expanded sufficiently, it's probably better to finish naturally than to just ramble meaninglessly to fill time.
Right.
However, the goal is to aim for that 2-minute mark by fully addressing all the bullet points and elaborating well. You can always add a brief concluding sentence about why the experience was memorable or its impact on you.
And the examiner will stop you.
Oh yes, they'll politely signal when the time is up. So your job is just to keep going, fluently and coherently, until they do. It's your chance to show you can organize your thoughts and speak at length.
Right. So for part 2, the mission is use that prep minute for keywords, create a story, elaborate with description, link ideas smoothly, and aim for the full time. Show off that fluency and narrative skill.
You've got it. That's the essence of part 2.
Now let's transition into part 3. This feels like, well, a different beast entirely, doesn't it?
It really is. The gear shift is significant. It's not about your personal experiences anymore.
Right. It becomes more general, more abstract.
Exactly. General terms, tougher questions, and you're expected to give longer, more complex answers.
And the questions are linked to the part 2 topic, but they aren't scripted.
That's key. They relate thematically to your part 2 topic, but the examiner adapts them based on what you said and, frankly, how well you're doing. It requires a deeper understanding of what's actually being asked.
Okay, and you mentioned complexity increases.
Yes. Part 3 questions usually come in about 3 sets, and they progressively get more complex, more abstract.
How does that relate to band scores?
Generally, sets 1 and 2 might be typical for candidates aiming around band 6 or 6.5. To get band 7 and above, you really need to handle sets 2 and especially set 3 well. The examiner is pushing you to see your limits.
Okay, let's dive into set 1 questions then. You said these are more factual or comparative. Give us an example.
Sure. A typical set 1 might be something like, how is history taught in schools in your country?
Right. Seems fairly straightforward. How would a good answer approach that?
A good answer develops the topic logically. It doesn't just give one fact. It might move from what was studied to how it was taught, maybe rote learning facts, then perhaps touch on testing, and maybe even highlight a lack, perhaps, of real debate or critical thinking.
Okay, building layers.
Exactly. And using connecting words effectively is crucial here. First, the main focus was, the problem was, as for how we were tested. So in other words, this shows strong fluency and coherence. Easily band 7 or 8 potential because it structures a detailed explanation.
And you mentioned follow-up questions.
Oh yes, be prepared. The examiner might jump in with, and what about now? Has it changed? You need to be able to continue developing those ideas.
Makes sense. Another set 1 example, maybe about teamwork, if your part 2 was about a team project.
Good one. In which jobs is teamwork particularly important these days?
Okay. The risk here is making it too personal again.
It is, initially. Someone might start with, well, in my job. A strong answer might acknowledge that briefly, but then quickly generalizes.
Oh.
By moving to broader statements about, say, company success, innovation, growth, then giving excellent general examples, like maybe mentioning medical research, where doctors, scientists, technicians collaborate, or perhaps bioengineering doctors and engineers working together on things like prostheses. Shows you can think beyond just your own experience. That's vital for part 3.
Okay, clear. Let's move to set 2 questions then. A bit more complex disadvantages, predictions.
That's right. For instance, linking back to the history topic, is watching fictionalized films on historical events or people a good way to learn about history?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. How would you tackle that for a high score?
Well, first, acknowledge it's interesting. That's an interesting question. Then, use precise vocabulary. Maybe talk about how films sometimes don't tell the whole truth or can even distort the past.
And give an example.
Absolutely. Back it up. Mention maybe inaccuracies in a specific film, like The Imitation Game about Alan Turing, pointing out how they changed the name of his code-breaking machine, for example. That shows strong specific knowledge and high lexical resource, band 8 level.
And you mentioned the examiner might interrupt here.
Yes. Crucial tip. If the examiner interrupts while you're giving a detailed example, don't panic.
Okay.
It usually just means you've said enough on that particular point, you've demonstrated the ability they were looking for, and they need to move on to cover more ground. That's usually a good sign, not a bad one.
Ah, okay, that's reassuring. Now, this next one sounds like a goldmine for vocabulary. What are the advantages and disadvantages of working in a team?
Oh, definitely. This is where it gets really interesting for showing off higher-level vocab.
How so?
Well, a strong answer contrasts the pros and cons, obviously. But what makes it stand out is using less common, maybe idiomatic vocabulary naturally.
Give me an example.
Okay, on the downside, you might say, well, sometimes one or more team members don't really pull their weight.
Pull their weight, nice idiom.
Exactly. It means they're not working hard enough. And then the responsibility tends to fall on the others. You could add, ideally, everybody should do their bit.
Do their bit. Another good one.
This kind of natural, accurate use of idiomatic language, that's showing Band 9 potential. You're perfectly answering that invitation to demonstrate nuanced, sophisticated expression.
Fantastic. Okay, finally, set 3. The most complex, you said. Speculative discussion-based.
That's the one. They often start with phrases like, to what extent is it true that? Or what would happen if? They're inviting you to really explore abstract ideas, weigh things up.
Right, so an example. Sticking with history.
How about, to what extent is it true that history has nothing to tell us?
Wow, okay, that's a big question. How do you even start?
A strong answer presents balanced arguments. You might identify the main argument to back that up, perhaps pointing out that we keep making the same mistakes, wars, conflicts.
Okay.
But then pivot. Use, on the other hand, perspective. Suggest solutions. And this is where complex grammar really shines.
Like conditionals.
Exactly, especially complex ones. But on the other hand, if we use historical analysis to really identify the roots of modern-day issues and conflicts, then we might be in a better position to come up with possible solutions. See? Sophisticated thought, sophisticated grammar.
And you could even push that further, right? Talk about past regrets using that if might have been structure.
Absolutely. A type 3 conditional, for example. If some governments had made better use of historical data on previous pandemics, then perhaps the terrible consequences of the recent one might have been lessened. That's very high-level grammatical control.
Impressive. Okay, another set 3 example, maybe related to teamwork or international relations.
Sure. Can international cultural and sporting events lead to better understanding between nations?
Another complex one. Needs a nuanced answer, I imagine.
Definitely. Acknowledge the complexity up front. Well, on the surface, yes, but I think the reality is so much more complex. Use comparatives, maybe modal verbs, might, could, perhaps a passive voice. It is often hoped that.
And discuss limitations.
Yes. Discuss how shared feelings among, say, athletes or fans might not automatically translate to better relations between leaders, perhaps due to things like selfish, narrow-minded nationalism or political realities. It shows you understand the nuances and can express them using advanced language. You're accepting that invitation to discuss abstract concepts thoughtfully.
Okay, so bringing it all together for part 3. It really demands thoughtful, general answers.
Showing you understand these nuanced, often abstract questions.
Structuring your arguments logically, using sophisticated grammar, advanced vocabulary.
It's about demonstrating your ability to discuss complex issues in English, showing the full breadth of your linguistic skills. It's your peak performance moment.
Right. So, to sum everything up then, achieving that high band score in IELTS, speaking really means mastering all 3 parts.
Absolutely. You need those snappy, expanded Part 1 answers.
Confidently handling the Part 2 monologue with good planning and elaboration.
And engaging in those thoughtful, general, well-structured discussions for Part 3.
It's a complete package.
And let's not forget the foundation underneath it all. Clear pronunciation. It's paramount throughout.
Good point. Speak clearly, not too fast, not too slow.
Exactly. Even the most brilliant answer won't score well if the examiner struggles to understand you. Fluency, vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation.
Okay. So hopefully for everyone listening, now that you understand the types of questions examiners ask and crucially, why they ask them those deliberate invitations, maybe think about what aspect of your IELTS speaking preparation you'll focus on next. How will you show off your best English now you know what they're looking for?
Great question to ponder.
We certainly hope this deep dive has given you some powerful insights and maybe a bit more confidence for your own test.
We hope so too. Good luck to everyone preparing.
See you later and Talk to Fluency YouTube channel. Subscribe for more.
Talk to Fluency from beginner to fluent.
Take your English skills to the next level.